Welcome to the Chief Architect Design video. Our project focus is the fire and ice kitchen you see in this rendering. I'm going to work through the design in four major categories. The wall with the cabinets, the custom cabinet used for our wine storage, the island with integrated fire, and then finally the ceiling. You can download this sample plan set from the Chief Architect website, and you can also follow along with the free trial version that you can find and download there. So let's go ahead and get started with our design. I'm going to begin the design by creating a room that's approximately 28 feet by 28 feet. Let's go ahead and drag out our wall. And I'm not going to worry too much actually about the dimensions until I finish, and then I'm going to assign our automatic dimensions. So let's go ahead and grab this wall, and you can either click on the wall and pull it out, or you can highlight the dimension and enter in the value you want. So I'll go ahead and select that one, and this secondary wall, we'll set that to be 28 feet. Now if you're a kitchen and bath designer, you may want to use interior dimensions. So let's go ahead and place our interior dimensions, and we'll just drag our dimension. Notice I've got that set up to be my default as inches, and we'll just drag it down this way, and that's going wall surface to wall surface. And with our 3D overview camera, let's take a look. Now the first thing you're going to notice are the walls, the floor, the baseboard. They all have defaults. Let's go ahead and select inside of this room. And if I double click to open that up, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to name this a kitchen. And when you name rooms a particular name, there are defaults that you can assign with them. For example, if you name a room a garage, it will automatically have a concrete slab. I'm going to select the kitchen name, and the next thing I want to do is in the room structure panel here, the ceiling height, I'm going to make that 13 feet or 156 inches. You'll notice on the diagram on the right gives you an indication of what you're changing. And even though I set my ceiling at 156 inches, notice there's an area down here called finish ceiling, and it's 154.5 inches. And the reason that that's slightly smaller than the 156 inches is it's going to take out for the ceiling structure, which I have at 5/8 sheetrock, and then also it's going to take out 7/8 for the floor finish. And if you were to zoom in or do a cross section on the design, you'd see those layers, and we'll take a look at that later. So I've made the changes to a 13-foot ceiling. Let's go ahead and select OK, and now you can see the results. Now let's also set our materials. I'm going to browse into the library, and you'll notice that I've searched for Armstrong flooring here. EHK 10LG happens to be a favorite that I want to use for the design. I'm going to apply that to the floor, and I'm going to also use a Behr paint color code that I know. And you can either browse to the library, or if you know the paint code, you can just simply grab that and apply that. So I'm just going to click on the walls, and I've basically got the materials that I want for the room design. Let's close our library, and now let's zoom in to this corner of the room. And I'm going to place a couple of cabinets using this perspective camera view. I'm going to grab our wall cabinet, and you'll notice that I've got a silhouette outline of where that cabinet's going to go. And when I approach the corner, it's automatically going to place our corner cabinet. And let's place one more cabinet over here. And you'll notice that my cabinets already have the colors and materials and door styles assigned with them. If I want to make these manufacturer specific, I can browse into the library, use the part numbers like I just did with the paint and floor, and you can assign those very specifically. And I'm going to show you a little bit about that here in just a second. Let's place one more cabinet over here. We'll bump that. And the first thing I want to do is I want to make this a 42-inch cabinet. I'm going to make a couple of modifications to the cabinets. Let's start here with the cabinet on the right. I'm going to resize that to 18 inches. And if I double click on that cabinet, I'm going to get the panel that describes information about that. You can click on the front and either add or change elements in that face. So to begin with, let's come down here on the separation, and just below that let's add a new drawer. So I've got a drawer. I've entered in an item height of 8 inches. Select OK. And now I'm going to select on the front of the door, and I'm just going to change that to a drawer. Select OK. On the corner cabinet, if I double click on that one, I'm going to come down to the front, remove the diagonal drawer, and if I want that to be a Lazy Susan, I can simply select that item right there. Select OK. And now I've made a few changes. If we zoom in here a little bit, one of the things that I want to do is I want to change my door style. So I'm going to grab all three of these cabinets by using a shift click, and then I can open them all at once and make global changes to these. So the first thing that I want to do is on the door and drawer styles here, I'm going to change the door style to use slab doors, and then I'm also going to change the drawer style to use slab drawers. And for the door handle, I'm actually going to use a custom element out of that, or a manufacturer element. So let's go ahead and browse in, and I've got a favorites area that I've saved this cup pull that's extra wide. So I'm going to make that my default. Select OK. And actually, before I make that change, let's use a framed door for our door style. Select OK, and you can see those changes. Now if you want to make that a manufacturer specific, you can just browse into the catalog and then assign those door, drawer, and also colors and wood species. One final thing I want to do is I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, and I'm just going to use the exact same white that I've got from my baseboard, and I'm going to apply that to my cabinets. Now I can apply this to one element at a time, or I can apply it to the entire cabinet, or I can apply it to all cabinets in the room. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll change all of those cabinets white. So now I'm going to use that as my default color style for all of my base cabinets. I'm going to close my perspective camera view, and now I'm going to use what's called our wall elevation camera, which I can isolate just the wall. Sometimes I find that designing in different views gives you a slightly better advantage, and in designing a kitchen along this wall, sometimes a wall elevation is a nice option. Let's browse back into the library and find a range in a cook hood that we can use. And let's go ahead and browse the entire library. A little bit about the library. You'll find manufacturer catalogs, which you can use for manufacturer-specific elements. You can find the non-branded elements in the Chief Architect Core and Bonus catalogs. And you can also save your own user catalog. Sometimes when there's tens of thousands of items in your library, you may find yourself just using specialty items that are frequently used. I've got a folder here that I've saved some of my kitchen elements that I use quite frequently. So to begin with, let's go ahead and find our cook range. And I'm going to use a commercial range. It's 48 inches. Select that, and I'm just going to bump that up against our cabinet. Now, probably what I'm going to do on this cabinet here is let me select that and mark that it has flat sides. So on the general cabinet panel, I've got an option here for flat sides. That way our appliance won't run into the countertop. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find a hood. So we'll scroll down and find our hood. And here's a stainless steel hood, and I'm going to purposely click off to the side here. One of the tools that I use frequently is a center tool. So I've got the object selected, and in the bottom of your menu is a Center Objects tool. So I can click that tool, and now I can really center that on anything that I want. You'll notice a visual indicator. So when I come over the range, it's going to center that exactly over the range. I don't have to be exact or use my dimensions to position that. Another tool that I use quite frequently, if I select this cabinet to the right of the cook range, is a tool called Copy, which is down here on the, again, the left-hand side of your menu on the bottom. So I'm going to select that, and after I select that, I have an option down here called Reflect About. It's a tool I use all the time, makes design very quick. So Reflect About, similar to the Center tool, is going to give me a visual indicator of what I want to reflect that about. And once I get that, I'll just click, and it automatically will copy and reflect that around the cook range. In preparation for the refrigerator, let's use our cabinet tool here, and I'm going to use a partition. So I'm going to select our partition, and let's go ahead and let's resize that to 2 inches. Actually, it's probably easier to double click on that, and we can set our dimension to 2 inches, change the depth to 24, and I'm also going to change the height to 114. And we'll select OK. And now I'm going to bump that against our base cabinet. And before I copy that one, I'm going to use my material painter, select the color from the base cabinet, and apply that using the material painter. Now I'm going to browse back over to the library, and I have a specific request for a Sub-Zero refrigerator, the Pro 48, and I've saved that in my favorites folder here. I've got a favorites folder called Fire and Ice Kitchen. One of the things I like to do with my personal library is save the library items that I use for projects in that library, and then I can easily refer back to them and use them in the future. So my Sub-Zero Pro 48, I've got that here. I'm going to place that, and then I'm going to bump that against our partition. Select the partition, use our Copy and Reflect About, and place that there. I'm going to grab this base cabinet and use the Copy and Reflect About, and I'm just going to resize that to 36 inches. I'm going to come back to this. This is going to become our custom specialty cabinet for our wine storage, and I'm going to revisit that here in a little bit. Let's close our library and come over, and I want to place our wall cabinets. Next, I'm going to place a wall cabinet off to the right side of our cook range. So I'm going to click that cabinet, and notice the door style is different. I didn't change any of the defaults for our door styles on the wall cabinets, so let's go ahead and select that. Pull our panel over here. And on the door style, what I want to do is change that door to use a framed door. And notice I have an option for glass here. I'll go ahead and select that. And I'm going to come back into this panel and visit a little bit more. One of the things I did want to point out that it's very easy for your cabinets to either be a frameless or to have a framed option. And right now I'm using a frameless option to modify our cabinets. Select OK, and then I'm going to use our material eyedropper and paint that. Now, one of the tools that after you've customized your cabinet, you can select a cabinet and then choose this tool called Set as Default. And now every time I place a new cabinet, if I just come over here and place one, it's going to have those same attributes. Let me just go ahead and delete that. So for this wall cabinet, let's change the height of that to 60 inches. And I'm also going to change the width to 33. And then I'm actually going to slide that against the wall, but I'm going to put a wall filler in between the cabinet and the wall since I want the doors to be able to open. Also, I'm going to make it a little bit larger because I'm going to put a window on the other side and I don't want it to run into the casing. So underneath our cabinet tools, you'll find a cabinet filler option. So I'm going to use a wall filler, and I'm just going to come over here and pull that right against the wall. And let's go ahead and also make that 60 inches. Let me double click that. I've got my snapping set so that it's not on the inch. So we'll just set that to be 60 inches. Select this cabinet. We'll come over here and bump that right against our filler. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I want to have a set of glass cabinets on the upper side of this. So let's go back into our cabinet panel here. Open that back up. So on the front tab, I'm going to select Add New. Choose my double door option. Set the item height to 18. Select OK. And for this element here, I want that to be glass. So if I select it, I've got the library option. Again, if you want to come in and choose your manufacturer door styles, you can do that right here. And I'm just going to use a Chief Architect door style. You'll find most of the door styles many of the manufacturers offer in the Chief Architect door styles. And let's go ahead and find a glass option. Select OK. And we'll select OK one more time. Using the Material Painter, we'll go in and select the door and apply that. Now I'm going to take this same cabinet. Let's create a copy of that. And I'm just going to pull it over here near the refrigerator. And I'm going to resize that to about 30 inches. And then let's go ahead and pull that in here. And then we'll resize that to 48. And then I want to change this panel here. Let's go ahead and double click on it. I want to change this panel here to be an opening. So I'm going to select it, change it from the door to just an opening. Select OK. And then on the very last element, I'm going to change that separation to be 2 inches. Select OK. And there we've made the modifications to those cabinets. Let's look at the dimension tools before we add the windows. So let's zoom out here a little bit. With our dimension tool, I can come through here and add the dimensions for our boxes. And if you pick up dimensions that you want to add or remove, there's a diamond on there. You can just simply click on that and remove it. You can also click on it and add a dimension. You'll find tools for centerline. So if we switch this to centerline, I can change my default real quick to centerline appliances. We can run through, get the center lines for the appliances, and then I can also do the end-to-end dimension and get our wall. So you can manually dimension it. The program also includes a tool for automatic wall elevations. And if I select that, let me just delete these dimensions that I have here. Remove those here first. So with the NKBA automatic dimensions, you can select that tool, and then all of those dimensions that typically the NKBA uses as a guideline will automatically dimension. So let's go ahead and select that. And it pretty quickly places most of the dimensions. Now you can modify these dimensions if it picks up something you don't want. You'll notice that I may have an extra center line here that's vertical, maybe more appropriate for a microwave. I can simply come in here and remove those elements that I don't want by grabbing that diamond and moving it off. Just pull that off. So it gives you a quick jump start. You can also modify the extension lines. If I want to pull that center line up into the element, you can simply pull those center lines down and get those exactly set up. Let me move on and place our windows. So I'm going to select my window tool. Let's zoom in here. These windows you can easily resize by simply clicking on them and stretching them. You can also double click on them and be exact. So in this case, I'm going to set the window to be 30.5 in width, 50 inches in height, and then our floor to bottom, I'm going to set it at 42 5/8. You'll notice other panels here for options, casing, if you want your frame overlap, depth. Go into the library and choose your casing profiles, lintel, sill. In fact, let's remove off our interior sill. Once you've made all those changes, you can set that to be your default as well. Now that I've got that window placed, let's zoom out and select our dimensions. Remember we talked about having the diamond so we can pull those over. Let's go ahead and pull that so that it's on our casing. So you can see that I've got a 6-inch gap between my cabinet box here and my window casing. So I'm going to select our window and I'm going to select that 6-inch dimension and I'm going to set it to 0 so that that casing is exactly lined up. Now let's place one more window, and actually to do that let's place our window here and let's open that up. And what I want to do to this window, actually probably would have been easier to just copy the other window, but I'm going to set the height of this one to 14 inches. And then the floor to bottom here, we'll have that stacked so it's 98 1/8. And in this case, I want to add a grid in here. So let's go in and look at our lights, and we'll go ahead and add a light across, and we'll also remove that sill so it matches the other window. Select OK. And using the center tool, I've got that window still selected. I'm going to center that over our other window so that then that matches up. So I've got our two windows set up, and I can block those windows together, shift click, and block them. So if I were doing wall framing, it would frame it as a single opening. I'm going to select the copy tool, reflect about, and select our cook hood, so then that bumps up right next to our partition. I'm going to add our crown molding to the wall cabinets, so I'm going to shift click to grab both of those, open them up, and on the moldings tab select add new. Again, if you want to go to the manufacturer catalogs, you can do that. And I'm just going to use the Chief Architect crown moldings, and we'll select a profile, CA70. Now these profiles are something you can draw. Many of the millwork manufacturers offer these profiles as download as a DXF file on their website. You can easily grab that, import it into the program, and it will automatically extrude that on your objects. Select that profile. I've got my default height to set up to be 6 inches. And let's change the offset so that it sits on top of the box. You can see that. Select OK. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. I can't select those, but to the partitions and the wall filler. So we'll just repeat that process here real quickly. So go back in, we'll find the same profile here. And it was CA70. Dimension is 6 inches, and we'll set that on top of the element. And finally, we'll use our material eyedropper, pick up the colors off of these elements. And it looks like that wall cabinet, we need to actually change that depth. That's why we got the extra one to be 24 inches. Select OK. I'm also going to add a crown molding in the room. So all I have to do to make that happen is click on the wall, click the open button here. Because I have room selected, you can see in the lower section of your menu. Select the open button on moldings, add new, and we'll just go right back down to the same crown molding we selected. Profile 70 and 6 inches, and floor to bottom at 114. And that should stack it along our cabinets. Let's talk about the backsplash. Cabinets have a default option to have a backsplash on them. And my cabinets here, you can see they do not have the backsplash. It's set at 0. You see the indicator, the preview, has no backsplash. If I set that to be 3 inches, you'll see my backsplash and select OK. The other cabinets, if I do the same thing to the cabinets on either side of the cook hood, that's going to leave a backsplash. Let's just go ahead and set that to be 3 inches. It's going to leave a backsplash that overlaps in this area, and then I've got to create my backsplash that might come in and jag around that behind the cook hood. So let me undo the backsplash we just placed on there. And if you're using Chief Architect X5 or prior, you'd use something like what we call a polyline solid. Come in here and drag out your backsplash. And you could use a tool called a brake tool. And we'll just come in here and approximately do it. And you could stretch that out and make it work all the way around. Now there's a new tool that I'm using in this video in version X6 called the Automatic Backsplash tool. And to use that, all I have to do is select the custom backsplash, click on the wall that I want, and it will automatically place that backsplash and cut it out around the cabinets. And again, you can resize this and refactor it. You'll notice that the whole thing is selected, but it's being cut out from the windows. And that's a pretty handy tool to be able to use and save yourself some time. Let's go ahead and stretch this up to our top. And I'll open up my library and let's browse down and find a material for the backsplash. I want a glass tile for that. And let's see if I can find my glass tiles here. Glass strip tile. And I'm going to find one of these tiles that works well. And now all I have to do is apply that on those backsplash elements that I have. Before I close my elevation view, let's grab this window and copy that around our refrigerator so we have one window above that specialty cabinet. And before I tackle creating our wine cabinet out of this, let's close our wall elevation view. Save that and take a perspective overhead view. See what our design is looking like so far. And you can see that the backsplash I may have placed on this wall over here. Let's go ahead and just remove that for the time being. I'm going to place a window over there and we'll put our backsplash. Let's open up this cabinet, and I want to create a specialty cabinet. So in this view, let's go ahead and select the front of it. And on the front, let's select it, hit the delete key, and we'll also delete that. So all we have are a set of shelves. And on those shelves, let's go ahead and specify the shelving. Pull our diagram over here. And you can specify the shelving when you choose the manual option. And let's go ahead and set that to be 4 shelves. And I'll just leave the distance here. Notice that I could change the depth setting. Select OK. And there's the change to that. Let's close our perspective view and go back into a wall elevation view. To create our wine rack on the cabinet to the left of the refrigerator, I'm going to use this inspiration photo that I have found and use that as I create the design element. So I've already taken this cabinet and removed the door and drawer off of it, changed my shelving, and now I want to put a specialty front on it that will allow me to slip and create the storage circles for the wine bottles. So to begin with, let's close our photo here and let's zoom in on this cabinet. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some guidelines. These are just some temporary lines here. So to place these guidelines, the temporary lines on the cabinet, just to help me with my design process, I'm going to press W on the keyboard here and drag out a line. And let's slide that over. It looks like I was off when I did that. And we'll just slide it over so that it's about on the edge of the cabinet. And now with that line highlighted, I'm going to use my multiple copy tool And I'm just going to slide a copy of that every 5 3/4 inches across that cabinet. And all I'm using this for is a guideline. And that should match up with approximately with the edge of our cabinet. Now I'm going to use our what's called Polyline Solid tool, and I'm just going to snap into the corner and pull that over so that it lines up. And I think we're okay there. So this is just a solid that I'm going to use as the cabinet front. And let me tile my views. I'm going to press F6 on the keyboard. And let's zoom in here so we can see that solid. And right now I have that layer turned off, so let's go into our layer control, find our CAD layer, and here's our CAD default. Let's turn that layer on, and you can see that that solid drew at the back of the box. So let's go ahead and pull that up to the front and have it snap in. And now I'm going to actually use my back clip cross section tool, which is just going to take a sliver through this cabinet box, and let's see where that's lined up. So you can see I have it pretty close. I was a little bit off when I drew it at the bottom and the top, but I'm okay with that right now. So let's close the cross section box, and let's focus, double click on that. Let's focus on creating our guides for the wine bottles. And it looks like I may have pulled that back just a little bit, so let's pull that back slightly and we should be able to see our shelves now. So using the circle tool, let's go into our CAD and circle tool. I'm going to create a shape in here that will be used for the cutout. If I double click on that, I'm going to set the diameter of that to 4 1/4. And then I'm going to position it roughly. Let me turn on my temporary dimensions so that perhaps I've got 3/4 inch on that side. Let me undo that. I just want to select the move button here. So 3/4 inch, and this will actually just move the object so that it's approximately centered, and then we'll just pull that down so that it's just near the top of the shelf. So I've got the cutout. Remember, what we're working towards here is creating this cutout for our wine bottles. And so I've got this cutout here, and if I convert that, I've got a symbol down here, convert polyline, and I'm going to convert it to a solid. And when I select OK, that's going to give me another panel here. And on that panel is an option to create a hole in the polyline solid. So since that's over the top of the larger rectangular solid, that's going to create a cutout in there. Okay. Now, to replicate this, you saw that I used the multiple copy to create the lines, and I'm just going to extend this multiple copy. If I select that hole that we created, use the multiple copy, there's actually an option here to do an array copy. So the first copy I've got set at 5 3/4 inch. And then there's a secondary offset, and I've got that set to be 6 1/16 inch. And that's going to allow me to do an array copy. So to make that happen, we'll select that tool, and I'm first going to hold down the Alt key. Let me turn off my temporary dimensions here. And let's go ahead and hold down the right click and then the left click. And that's generated the holes in the object. And if I use my material eyedropper, let's pick up the color off of this partition, apply it onto the solid, and now we can take our 3D view. Let's close our wall elevation down here. Yep, we'll save that. And let's just take a quick view and see what our wine cabinet looks like. Okay, so you can see sorry about that. You can see we've got the cutout. Sometimes I use the vector view camera so you can see a little bit more clearly what's going on. And now all I have to do is place my wine bottles. Let's go back into our elevation view and do that. So back in the library, I've saved a wine bottle that I've browsed into our larger library. And we'll turn that layer on so we can see that. And let's go ahead and position that wine bottle here so that we can get the location of that right about there. And I'm going to use that same copy operation, multiple copy. Hold the Alt key down to go horizontal, and then go down vertical, and that will place all of our wine bottles. And we're fully stocked. Now the last thing I'm going to do to this cabinet, let's go ahead and put feet on it. I'm going to double click and open it once I've selected it. And on the accessories here, I'm going to choose the library and browse in and find our millwork and cabinet feet. And I'm going to look for a tapered, there we go, a tapered leg. Select OK. That's going to take over in place of our toe kick. Select OK. Material eyedropper off of the main body color. And now I can select this cabinet, add it into the library, just simply by selecting it, grouping it, and you'll notice that I've added that into my library in here as a wine cabinet, and I can easily place that in the future. So if you've done any customized work, you can quickly add it to your library and reuse it. Let's close our elevation view here. Go back in and take a 3D view. We'll point our camera at that cabinet, and you can see that we didn't pull our wine bottles out far enough. So let's close that 3D view down. You can see where we placed them in the plan view. It's a good example of sometimes elevation view works well, other times it doesn't. So with that object, let's go ahead and simply let's just drag out a CAD line where we roughly want those wine bottles selected. And then let's turn off, let's go to our layer set and choose all off. And then inside of that, let's just turn on the CAD default and then our furnishings and fixture. That way we can easily move those wine bottles. And it looks like I missed it. Let's go back in and find furniture. I chose the wrong one. And we'll turn that on there. Okay, so now I'm just going to group select all of these bottles here. And we'll just simply pull those out to about where we want those on the CAD line. To return back to our regular default set, you can see where they're sticking out. We'll just delete that line. Now let's go back in with our camera and just point and click to the cabinet, and there we go. Now I've also ray traced this view. Sometimes it's nice to show this, and you can see exactly the way it's going to look for the detail for your clients. We've completed steps 1 and 2 in our kitchen, and let's move on and complete the last 2 steps with our island and our ceiling. The inspiration for the island is actually from a local restaurant that had the fire integrated into the bar. I want to repeat this process for this custom kitchen. Let's open up the program and design our island. I'm going to use the base cabinet tool and place a couple of cabinets out in the middle of our room. So I'm just going to come in here, click to place those. Now this cabinet, let's resize that to a 36-inch cabinet. You'll notice the label update as I resize those. And we'll change that to an 18-inch cabinet. Now before I select these and copy them, let's go ahead and make a couple of modifications. In this case, I want to create a bank of drawers. So we'll just add a new drawer in here. Change the drop down and make that an 8-inch for the item height. And we'll select on the last object here and just convert that to a drawer. Alright. Now let's select all three cabinets, holding the Shift key down in the mouse. Copy those, reflect them about the center. Notice the visual indicator that I get, and there's the cabinets. Now, I'm also going to select these two cabinets on the end and copy those and reflect them around the center of the cabinet, because we're going to have a pretty big island here. To position the island, I'm going to use our end-to-end dimension tool, and I'm going to drag a dimension from this group of cabinets over, and we'll just zoom in, and I want to pick up just the countertop edges, so I'm going to pull that diamond back out so it snaps to the cabinet countertop, and we'll use the same dimension tool and pull it from the wall to the cabinets. Now once I have those dimensions set, I'm going to drag a marquee around by holding the Shift key down in the mouse. All of my cabinets are selected. I'm going to highlight that dimension, and I'm going to set it to be 54 inches. This one's already 54 inches, but let's change it and make it 54 and 7/8 inch for now. I'll make a couple more modifications to the cabinets in our island. Let's open up our library, and the first thing I want to do is I want to find some of the appliances and fixtures. So I've got a dishwasher, and I'm just going to click on this cabinet here, and notice that the label changed to a dishwasher, and it actually replaced the cabinet, put an opening and the dishwasher in there for me. Let's go down and find a sink, and I'm going to find a sink without a faucet. And I'm just going to click on the cabinet, and watch when I click on that cabinet, it changes the label to Sink Base 36. And finally, let's find a faucet. I'm looking for a carbon fiber faucet, and let's find that in our library. And I'm just going to click and place that on this cabinet, and I need to zoom in and rotate that around. And I'm going to use my center tool after I position it and use the cabinet to center that on. So I've got a sink base, I've got my dishwasher. I'm also going to select this base cabinet here, double click on it, and what I'm going to do is delete the top drawer, and then I'm going to select this element here, the left door, convert it into a drawer so I can make it a pull out. On the door and drawer tab, I'm going to go down to the drawer handle, and down from top I'm going to change that to 3 inches. So you can see our pull-out has been changed, and also on the label I'm going to change that from a 1 drawer to a pull-out 24 inch. So that's all the cabinet changes I'm going to make for the time. Now I'm going to draw our custom countertop on. The custom countertop that I'm drawing here is 36 inches wide by 12 feet long, and it's also 6 inches in depth. So in Chief Architect, I'm going to use the custom countertop tool. Let me zoom out here just a little bit, close my library. And underneath the cabinet tools, you'll find a custom countertop tool. And I'm just going to come in here roughly and drag out a custom countertop. And if we select that countertop here, let's go ahead and double click to open that. Bring our panel over here. And let's change the height of the cabinet. Let's raise that up 5 inches. I'm going to set that to be 41. And we'll change the thickness to be 6 inches. Select OK. And now I'm going to pull this back and snap it to the edge of the countertop. And if I zoom way in, you'll notice that this overhang, this dashed line and solid line, one represents the countertop, being the solid line, one represents the box. You'll notice that it disappeared on these cabinets because that countertop is now sitting exactly on top of that. If I turn on my temporary dimensions and I click on this edge, you'll see I get a temporary dimension. I'm going to highlight that, change that to 36. And I'm going to do the same thing on this edge. I'm going to change that to 12 feet, or 144 inches. So now I've got a 12 by 36 countertop, and using my center tool, I'm going to center that on our sink base. I'm going to use the perspective overhead camera and take a look at what we have so far. So you can see how our island is progressing here. And I'm going to open up the library, and let's go down into our manufacturers and find Caesarstone. And I'm going to change the cabinet colors here to a color called Pure White. And I'm just going to grab that. I'm going to use my material painter in room mode and paint all of the cabinets. And actually, let's change that back for the just the island. See if I can find that color one more time. Spring Blossom. So using the component mode, this is a nice way to use your material painter in just certain modes, whether it's the room, the entire plan, you can set that up. To create the hole in the countertop, let's bring up both views at the same time. And I've just pressed F6 on the keyboard to tile my views. If I zoom in, I'm going to use the custom countertop hole tool. You'll notice when you click on your cabinet that it shows up here in my tool palette. You can also choose it from the drop down. And I'm just going to come in here and create the basic length of that hole. In the 3D view, you can see where it cut the countertop out. And if I highlight this element, and we'll zoom in here, change that to be 6 inches on this side. And I guess I got lucky, that resized it to be 6 inches as well. We'll highlight this edge here, and I want that to be 8 feet or 96 inches. And I'll use my center tool, center that on the sink base. Now to create the flame area, I'm going to use a tool called Copy and Paste in Place. So when I click this tool down in the left-hand section of your screen at the bottom, Copy and Paste in Place, you won't see anything happen because it made an exact copy in the same space. But I'm going to use a tool called Convert to Plain Polyline, again down in the lower section of your screen. And then there's another tool called Convert to a Polyline, and that's going to pop up and ask me what I want to convert that to. I'm going to choose a polyline solid and then remove the hole option, the elevation at the top, and the thickness of it, and we'll set that to be 4 inches. So I now have a filled in area that I can put my natural gas line and fire. In the library, I'm going to search for crushed glass. I actually have a library that I have imported here. Under the fire and ice, let's grab our crushed glass here. And I'm going to grab olive. And I'll just simply spray that on that. And if the texture is a little bit large, I feel like it is, I'm going to adjust that texture and I'm going to reduce it on the texture area by about half. Right now it has a scale of 20 by 20. We'll reduce that down, and now that looks a little better. Make a copy of that. To get the flame in this area, let me close my 3D view down, and I'm going to search for flame. It's an image that should be in our library here. Let's see if we can find a flame that we like. Let's grab this one, and I'm just going to place this off to the side out here. And let's double click and open that up. And let's change the size of that flame. I don't want it to be 20 inches. I would be supposedly grilling marshmallows at the bar with that. I want to change that to 5 inches, and we'll just make the width of something like 54 inches. And then above the ground, I'll set that to 40 inches. And let's go ahead and eyeball up where that might go. I'm going to use the copy tool and create one more. I've overlapped those flames slightly, and if I shift click on both of those, I'll just slide them into place. And if I take a 3D view again, use our overhead camera, we should be able to see our flame. Now I'm going to have to vent this flame, so I'm going to go into the library and find our cook hood that we have for that. And to do that, let's again tile our views, and we'll go back into our library. And I have a cook hood here that I've customized off of the cooktop cook hood. So let's go in and find that hood, get a preview of it, and I'm just going to place that in my plan view. Let's go ahead and rotate that around, and I'll just eyeball to place that roughly. There we go. And let's zoom in on the 3D view, and we can rotate around. You'll notice in my 3D view as I'm zooming around, I keep seeing this wall. And sometimes if I toggle back, when I'm in a tight view, I'll just grab these two exterior walls. They could be interior walls as well. And there's an option to make those invisible. And now if I return back to my overview, or better yet, if I just use my camera now, I can get a better view inside of this room and not be constricted. It works really well for tight spaces when if we go back to the original camera, if we go back out here, it works really well to allow you to see into a tight space, and I like to do that sometimes. Now before we move on and look at our ceiling, I'm going to grab these two windows here. I'm going to use my copy tool, and I'm going to paste those over here. And let's just go ahead and slide those. Might be easier to do that in our plan view. Let's just go in and we'll just pull these two windows over. And I'm going to use this tool and group select those so I can move both of them. And I'm just going to pull that right up against that cabinet. And I go back into my overview camera. You can see the way that looks. And I'm also going to place a door over here. And let's make that a glass door. So I'm going to double click on it, change it to a glass door, and I'm also going to change the height to 8 feet, and we'll just set the width to be 60 inches. There we go. You'll notice that the backdrop that I have, I just imported that using, I actually went out and looked for a fog with rolling hillsides, and I was able to grab one. And it's kind of fun to customize your views. Let's grab a couple of those windows and we'll just pull those over so you can see how that looks. Now, a final step in the Fire and Ice kitchen is to create our ceiling. The inspiration that I have for this is an image that I found from a designer that had a pretty interesting ceiling, and I want to apply that to this design that I have. And I've already rendered that out. In fact, I've rendered it out actually as a technical illustration as well. Sometimes you don't want to show the materials as accurately. It gives you a little option to abstract that. There's also the watercolor rendering that I like to use sometimes as well. Those are built into the program, and you can easily toggle that in the camera settings. So let's explore creating this ceiling. And we'll go back into the program. Let's toggle our camera to a vector style camera. Now, in the ceiling, the first thing I'm going to do, if you look at this photo I have on the screen here, zoom in here a bit. In the upper section above the concentric circles, I'm going to use what's called a soffit to box that in. So in the program, let's tile our views. Let's bring our kitchen off to the left here. And I'm going to zoom in. And the first thing that I'm going to do with the soffit tool found underneath the cabinet tools is I'm going to place a soffit against this wall. And let's zoom in and grab that soffit, and we'll stretch it to this edge of the wall, and I actually have turned on those walls to be invisible. Let's see if we can snap it roughly into place there. And then we'll just pull that out. And if I highlight that soffit and double click on it, the first thing I'm going to do is change the height of that. And at first, let's set the height to be 35 inches. And the depth, we'll just give it a number, 54 for now. And then the floor to bottom at 120. And that should snap right above the cabinets. Okay. Now, before I continue on, let's raise that soffit up so that I can create an area for the concentric circles. So let's double click on that soffit one more time, and let's change the height of it to be 15 inches, and then we'll raise this up to 140. So that's going to raise that up right up against the ceiling and give us some room. Now that I've got that set up, let's also set this to be about 58 inches on the depth of it. Let's go ahead and copy that soffit around to the other walls. So let me broaden my plan view here. And using the copy reflect about the center of the room tool, we'll flip that soffit over there, and then I'll create another copy of that. We'll slide it over, and I'll just rotate it. It's a little faster than creating yet another soffit. Bump it in, and then I'll just snap it to the edge of the two soffits. There we go. And then again, copy and reflect about the center of the room. And roughly I have the soffit positions. I'll make some final adjustments a little later. Now that the soffits are in place, what I want to do is create this concentric circle using our slab tool and polyline solid. So here's a rendering of the completed ceiling that we're going to create. Let's close that view and let's get started. I'm going to use one of our tools called the Polyline Solid tool. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to snap on the corner of the wall, and I'm just going to drag that to the other corner of the wall. If I select that, tab in and get the selection, let's go ahead and set the elevation information here. Elevation at the top is 140 inches. I'm going to add 7/8 for the subfloor, so that will raise that up. And then the thickness I will set at 20 inches. And let's take a 3D overview so you can see what we're doing here. And you can see that here is that solid that we've created. I've turned my soffits off. Let's split our screen here. Let me just pull that over to the other side. Now the next thing I want to do is, let me turn my crosshairs on here real quickly. I don't usually use those in a video, but I always have them on for drawing. I'm going to press the W on the keyboard here, and I'm going to draw a line that will serve as the center point for the circle. This is just a temporary intersection that I'm creating. We'll zoom in. Where those two lines intersect, under the CAD menu, I'm going to use a circle about center. And as I'm dragging this out, I'm going to press the Tab key, and I'm going to set my radius to be 66 or 132 inches in the diameter. So this CAD circle, once I select it, I'm going to use a tool in the lower section of your menu here to say Convert to Polyline. And in this case, I'm going to create the same polyline solid that we used to create that slab that is now above the ceiling. Select that, and you'll notice that there's an option here to put a hole in the polyline solid. I'll select that, and that's now going to create the cutout for the ceiling. Go over here in our 3D view. We can rotate around here a little bit. I'm going to fix those materials after we finish the next step. So I've created the slab, I've put the hole in it. Now what I want to do to create our concentric circles is I'm actually going to use a molding polyline and show you how to create that. So let's close that. So I'll select the circle, use the copy and place you'll see in the lower left hand section of your screen. Select that. Of course nothing happens because it copies it exactly into place. Let me now open that, remove the hole, and then I'm going to use the convert tool, and I'm going to convert that to a molding polyline, and then we'll assign the molding profile to that. And let's go ahead and set the height of that to be 120 inches plus the subfloor of 7/8. And then on the moldings, let's go ahead and go in, and I've already drawn this molding actually for the insert. You can see the profile. Now I just went into CAD Detail, drew that profile. These are molding profiles you can draw yourself. You can go to a manufacturer, get their profiles, and import them, and then the program will automatically extrude that in 3D. So you can see my profile, how it stair steps here, and at the very end, down at the bottom, that's going to be for the inside molding that I want, and it's about a 1/2 inch. And then each one of those stair steps are 6 inches by 4 inches. I'm going to assign that molding, and let's see, let's just double check, and I think we've got everything that we need here. Select OK. Now let's go over to our 3D view, maximize that, and we'll rotate around and look at the underneath of it. So that looks pretty good. Let's open up our library and choose our colors. So to begin with, let's see if we can find a Pioneer wood molding that I'm going to use, and from Armstrong. So I'm going to apply that to the initial element, and now you can see what that looks like. And then from inside of the room, let's use our camera, and we'll just direct our camera inside here, and you can see what that looks like. You can see our final design here, and you can add the accessories. I've got the chairs, you notice the wine bottles, the glasses above the refrigerator, and then of course our advanced rendering techniques called Ray Trace. You can then use a built-in Ray Trace wizard and launch an assistant that will walk you through how to ray trace this. And the ray tracing is going to give you a much more realistic view. You'll notice this is ray traced. Let me scroll through a couple of images here. You'll get the reflections, you notice, off the top of the countertop on the wine bottles, off of the countertop in the fire bar. You'll see the reflections of the light. So all of the realistic lightings are set up into the ray trace, and the assistant will walk you through creating that. Hope you've enjoyed the session. If you've got questions, you can contact us here at chiefarchitect.com, our sales department. Don't forget you can download a free trial version, and we'll also put this plan up that you can pull down on our samples page, and you can follow along and replicate it. Thanks.